The Hare Who Spoke with the Stars. It was sunset, and there was a funny atmosphere brewing in the darkening valleys of Wales. Clouds like great purple bruises massed in a sulking scarlet sky. The air felt kind of heavy, and it was quiet. Too quiet, thought Fian the Hare, who was hiding under a bush, spying on the Roman army's 14th Legion setting up camp in a soggy Pembrokeshire field. There were several such legions stomping all over Wales at the moment. They come to see what the rebel Welsh Druids were doing and tell them not to do it. Most Druids had retreated to the sacred island of Anglesey, just off the coast. This was the beating heart of Celtic resistance to the iron rule of Rome when all the southern counties in England had given up years ago. The mighty Roman army may have had the best weapons, excellent discipline, and be well versed in the art of open battle, but they weren't coping well with the guerrilla warfare they now faced in northern England and Wales, and were wary of the country's Druid warrior priests. Because those Druids weren't just inciting the Celts to carry on fighting. No. It was said and said truly that they wielded dark magic, could shapeshift into animals and control the weather. With their flowing robes and long braided hair and horizon stares, those men and women looked like they walked between worlds and knew way too much about what lay hidden behind the curtain of the dark. The Romans also suspected that Druids hexed them whenever they could. They were right about that. The sleek brown hare crouched lower and surveyed the scene in front of him. There were 100 legionnaires down there. They'd only arrived this morning, but they'd already got their tents up, latrines dug, and cooking pots on the go. Fast work, thought Fian. Romans were nothing if not efficient. However, from the farting and the retching and the terrible smell now issuing from the toilet trench, it appeared that many had fallen unaccountably belly-sick the moment they arrived. Fian smirked and willed the Druids on with all his heart. He sniffed the air cheerfully, then went rigid. There was something familiar about that rich smell coming from a cooking pot down there. Several soldiers were crowded round it. A cook with a vicious chopping knife in one hand and a ladle in the other cuffed a soldier irritably. "Get your filthy hands out of there!" "Oh, I only wanted a taste. We've been eating your nettle-stewed slop for days, and now we've got a bit of rabbit." "Hare, if you don't mind," said the cook, waving his ladle. "Tastier meat by far, especially if you pull the brains and the giblets down through its nose and mash them up in the gravy." Fian gulped and fled. 2 hours later, it became clear that it just wasn't Fian's night. He was sitting on a grassy bank minding his own business when there was a sharp swish and a tangle of netting whipped round him. 2 hands lifted him up struggling and then grasped him firmly by the base of the ears. He kicked out hard, but the hands held him firm and high, and he was fighting thin air. Fian flailed, twisted and heaved, letting out the thin, tearing shrieks of a hare in distress, which sounded like an outraged falcon. "Hush, brother, hush," murmured a voice. "I'll not hurt you. Be still." Fian stopped struggling and found himself looking into the thin, anxious, but unmistakably kind face of a young man. His hair hung in rat's tails down his back, and he had a straggly little beard. The hem of his dark robes was sputtered with mud. On the back of his left hand was a tattoo of a circle with 2 lines slashed through it. The hare bared his teeth and gave a threatening wheeze. "I only wish to speak with you, okay? If I put you down, will you stay a moment?" Fian hesitated and then made an affirmative hare noise, something between a high-pitched whistle and a click. He found himself lowered to the ground, and the net was drawn carefully away so as not to catch in his claws. "My name is Taliesin." "And?" snapped the hare. "I'm an apprentice Druid," said the young man, pointing at his circle tattoo. "Well, congratulations. If you must know, I'm not enjoying it that much. I always wanted to be a storyteller, like a bard, but my parents won't hear of it. Firstborn son, I am. And in our family, that's always meant becoming a full-on priest, like my dad. Your dad's a druid? Yeah, a big one. You don't like the work? Asked Fian, becoming interested despite himself. It was a great honour to be chosen for warrior priesthood. That way power lay. Taliesin was silent for a moment and then said quietly, because I'm not very good at it. Huh? I just don't have the knack, okay? The queen of our local Celtic tribe thinks I've got potential and keeps asking me to do stuff for her, but it usually goes wrong or has no effect. Now she's insisting I find a way to get rid of those Romans who've just rocked up. I don't seem to be doing much harm. Well, apart from eating my cousins, that is definitely not okay. You reckon? Look, they've not come for our pretty Welsh scenery. Don't you know what they want? What all Romans want? Ian shook his head. They've been marching all over Britain demanding tribute and loyalty to their emperor in exchange for safety. Oh, and for us to ditch our Celtic gods, yeah, and suck up to theirs instead. Just like that. And when we say we won't, they kill us and burn our villages. Oh, that's bad, very, very bad, muttered the hare, shocked. Anyway, I have been given one last chance to redeem myself by dealing with them, and I need your help with a bit of magical divination to find out how. Well, any hare would do, but you're the one I've caught, so it's going to have to be you. Don't you touch me, hissed Fiona, snapping his teeth together. Now, hares are sacred to the Celts, who considered them precious and magical. This was one of the reasons why they were used for divination. Priests and leaders of the tribes, too, would watch the animals running, dancing, leaping on full moon nights, using their movements to interpret the future. Ian started backing away, though he had reason, for on special occasions Druid priests were permitted, with certain respectful rituals, to go further, meaning that they would kill a hare with a single stroke from a sacred knife, remove their victim's steaming entrails, drop those on the ground, and read the future and the patterns they formed. Moving so fast the hare didn't even see him, Taliesin stepped closer and placed a hand on the hare's back. One minute he was several feet away, the next he was up close. Fian could not understand how it happened, and what's more, the pressure keeping him pinned was feather-light, yet he could not move. If you don't help me, said the young man in a reasonable tone, I'm done for. Know what they do with failed druids? Fian didn't know, and he didn't care. He tried to sound tough. Listen, pretty boy, nobody's cutting my guts out. It's just not happening, right? Take that knife to me and I will chew your hand off at the wrist. I doubt that very much, replied Taliesin. Your teeth may be sharp, but they're rather on the small side for that sort of thing. And at the risk of stating the obvious, I've got you trapped, so I can do what I like with you. Fian tried to wriggle, but his muscles seemed turned to mush. He steeled himself to run, but his legs would not cooperate. He felt like a stranded jellyfish, a jellyfish whose insides were about to be spread all over the grass. Then an idea struck him. It was a bit of a long shot. It was better than nothing. Look! Maybe I could help you out here, but without getting my stomach slit open. We hares, we dance for the moon and the stars, you know. Well, only occasionally, to be honest, but we do it. And sometimes, just sometimes, they tell us stuff. Stuff we could never have thought up on our own. Oh, let me go, Druid boy. Let me go. And I will ask them about the Roman army, I promise. Or at least, he added, I could try. Taliesin smiled. Have no fear. Your intestines will stay where they are. I don't kill animals. I only pretend I do because, well, people expect it, you know. And I'm well aware of that dancing thing. In fact, I was hoping you'd suggest it. He removed his hand from the hare's back, and Fian found that once again he could move. Oof, that's better. But look, isn't there something like, I don't know, druidy you could do? The hare gave his back legs a wiggle to check they were definitely working. I mean, you had me totally stuck back there. What's more, Looking at the young man more closely, you seem, I don't know, a bit different. You've got mystique, right? I would say that you are not so unmagical as you seem to believe. Well, I can do some good stuff. I can bring people dreams and visions, really vivid ones. I've always been good at mixing up potions for that. And I can make medicines. I've got quite a few people better, actually. There you go, nodded the hare encouragingly. But not much else. Look, like I said, my thing is storytelling and poetry, said the young man with a faraway look in his eyes. So, can you ask the stars about the Romans? Tonight. It's just that we're a bit short of time. I'm not doing it just for you. What? Oh, come on, you just said... You misunderstood me. I will do it for all the beings who live in this land, replied the hare, standing up, with his ears pointing firmly skywards. I will dance for us animals, I will dance for the birds, I will dance for the spirits of the earth, the rivers, the trees, for the oak, for the ash, the yew and the alder. I will dance for our mighty Celtic deities, Lord Bran, Lady Morrigan, Lady Cerridwen, and yes, I will dance for you humans as well, for you are part of the web of all life that is here. At this, the young Druid bowed low and led him to a hill that stood alone at the far end of the valley. Ringed by tall, dark trees, its crest was bare to the star-strewn sky. But though Fian knew every inch of the countryside round here, he could not recall ever having seen the place before. I know that you prefer to dance in the fields with the others, said Nickhola-Susanne, but tonight you do so by yourself, and in a high place closer to the constellations. You'll be able to hear the stars better from here. The hare settled down to wait. He sat perfectly still until the gold of the sun was dropping below the horizon just as the moon's silver shadow was rising. This was the hour between dog and wolf, when creatures of the day hurry home to seek shelter from the night. And because the moment hangs in balance between sun and moon, day and night, this is the time when magic happens. Now, thought Fian. He got up and he began to dance. Tentative and slow were his movements at first, but becoming more energetic and powerful by the moment, as he started to skip and stamp and turn and leap in swirling patterns as if drawing a labyrinth on the ground with his feet. Next he began to sing too, hare yips, squeals and whistles which punctuated his movements perfectly. Above his head, stars began emerging. The more he sang, the more he danced, the more appeared until a haze of silvery light rained down upon him. Suddenly the hare lifted his head and he called to them by name. Sirius, Arcturus, Seven Sisters, Heavenly Archer, help us. Mighty star beings, tell us how to defend our land. Throughout the entire night, the little hare danced and sang until his fur was matted with sweat and his knees shook. But never, not once, did he hear a single word in reply. As the sky began to lighten in the east, he flopped face down onto the grass, exhausted. He had failed. Or had he? Images began to flash past his closed lids so fast he could barely follow them. Marching Romans, the sun glinting off the eagle standard they carried before them, a line of glowing red eyes, a sheet of blue-green flame, the faces of soldiers, eyes wide and staring as if they had seen terrible things, a bubbling black liquid thick as honey. Use their worst nightmares against them. The hare sprang to his feet. He knew exactly what needed to be done. It was pretty weird, but it could work. Thank you, he shouted to the fading stars. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It won't do you much good, you know, said a high, shimmering, chilly little voice in his head. What? Why not? We have answered your question, but you never asked if you could tell anyone, and you can't. Speak of this, little hare, And you are dead. What do you mean I can't tell anyone? It is not only the stars who heard you tonight. So did Mars, the Romans' god of war. Mars is powerful, impulsive, and he tolerates no interference. His lieutenant is a wolf. All armed weapons are his servants, and he will unleash both against any who try and thwart the warriors who worship him. But he could not stop you gaining this knowledge. That was a gift freely given by the stars themselves, and we do not answer to him. But he will never permit you to speak of it. Well, what good is your advice then? Yelled the hare. The crystalline silence fell softly down upon him, and though he pleaded with the stars again and again, they said not one more thing. Morning began to pale the eastern edge of the horizon. One by one the constellations faded, and the hare's hopes faded with them. When there was only a single bright star left in the sky, Fian got up to leave. And as he made his way miserably back down the hill, his entire body aching and desperate for a drink of water, he distinctly heard a new voice in his head. It said, "Wait." The hare stopped dead. For this voice, it was different from the cool silvery detachment of the other stars. It was sweeter and lower. It was Venus, star of the morning, who's not really a star at all, but the bright planet which heralds the dawn. "Listen well," whispered the voice. "The hare tribe is dear to me, for the dawn is your magical time, as it is mine. And I wish to reward your willingness to collaborate with one who was once your enemy, a human, against an even greater enemy who threatens you both." Finn stood up on his hind legs. "Thank you, bright lady," he whispered. "So, what do I do?" "Talk with your ears." "What?" "Think about it." "I will, though I don't get it. And what do I tell Taliesin?" "Never mind him for now. Go to the Queen of the Celts. She may surprise you." The hare ran as fast as he possibly could to the nearby Hall of Humans, demanded an audience with Regan, queen of the local Celtic tribe, before he could lose his bottle. She'd been ruling for 2 years since her father had died at the hands of the Romans, and she was only 19. Her name meant Little Ruler, but she was taller than the average man and could fight as well as any of them. The hare looked so wild-eyed and was so insistent that the Queen's female servants brought him into her presence at once. She was none too pleased at being disturbed so early. It was 6:45 a.m. But she noted the urgency quivering round Fian like a heat shimmer on a hot day and recognised important news. You're never going to believe this," began the hare awkwardly. "Try me," said the Queen, drawing her white wolfskin cloak around her and sitting bolt upright in bed. She listened carefully as his story tumbled out like a river. "So you see, they told me what to do to get rid of the Romans, but I can't tell you. I can't." His voice rose to a hysterical squeak. "Mars will strike me dead." "Calm down. Breathe. Are you breathing? Good. We just need a different approach. One that will tell me what I need to know without leaving you as a pile of fur on the floor, assassinated by the wolf servant of the Roman god of war. You with me so far?" Fian nodded warily. "Okay. Pretend you can't speak." The hare clapped both paws over his mouth. "Now then. Do you like cowslips?" Fian's ears shot straight up. "Good. Do you trust me?" The hare hesitated, but being a truthful animal, eventually his ears went out at half-mast. "Fair enough. How do you feel about the Romans?" Fian's ears went back like an angry cat's. "Can you do sign language with your paws?" The hare sketched a circle in the air. "I think," smiled Regan, "we've got this." Following the advice of the stars, which Fian had been able to communicate excellently with ear talk and paw waving, Queen Regan instructed that a trench be dug immediately now, this very morning, all the way around their settlement, and that it was filled with dry firewood with a thick layer of driftwood from the local beach placed on top. Fian was sent to call as many of his tribe as he could find, ask them to come to the edge of the settlement and wait there until needed. Once he brought them up to speed about the mashed harebrains in the gravy, they were totally on board, and by tea time there were 62 of them hiding in the field in front of the trench. Taliesin, however, spent the day combing the woods. He collected some very specific plants, which he refused to show anyone but conceal beneath his cloak, and then boiled up into a thick black liquid. This was placed in a stoppered stone flask and given to the best tracker in the area. The tracker turned out to be a spry old lady wrinkled up like a walnut who could not only follow down the most elusive quarry, but was brilliant at popping up from nowhere and then vanishing without a trace. Her job was to find a way to mix the potion into the soldiers' stew pots that very evening without them noticing. No one did see how she managed it, but that night the 14th Legion did not sleep well. Anyone listening would have heard their yelps and night cries as one after another of them woke in nightmare terror. There were many haggard military faces the next morning. "Can't possibly have been my food," growled the cook, slashing his meat cleaver through the air, "and anyone who says it was will feel the edge of this, right?" The soldiers hurriedly agreed it must surely have been an off batch of wine, and no more was said. Their legate had been wasting time holding strategy meetings all morning, but he had his men lined up, tired and unsettled as they were by mid-afternoon. Leading from the front on his big black horse, he marched them off to talk to Regan. He was planning to have his usual bullying conversation about safety, tributes, giving up the old gods. Also, to use any methods necessary, including butchery, bribes and threats, to ensure their complete obedience, as he had so successfully with the tribes of southern England. But they weren't in England anymore. They were in Wales, which was a rather different matter. And the Druids were watching. Which might have been why the Legion got unaccountably lost half an hour out of camp, so it was already dusk by the time they reached Regan's settlement. The first thing they saw was a ring of fire blazing round it. Strange shapes were flickering in the fire as the sea salt dried into the driftwood flashed green, purple, violet, silver. Even odder, a line of 62. What were those things? Rabbits? Wondered the startled legate, sat behind the fire trench in an unbroken line. A soldier walked forward and stuck the Legion's eagle standard aggressively into the ground. Soldiers promptly formed 4 lines of 25 behind it. In reply, 62 hares stood up on their hind legs and stared the men down, fire reflecting back from their gaze as if from a series of dark mirrors. Only instead of there being a normal black pupil in the centre of each animal's eye, there flickered a feral orange flame. Every soldier present felt fear of the unknown stroke its dark wings across their face. "Welcome!" cried Queen Regan, stepping forward and bowing gracefully. Her red hair rivered down her back, she wore a high crown of eagle feathers, and her beautiful white wolfskin cloak trailed behind her. "Welcome, brave soldiers, mighty Roman conquerors. Welcome to the land where dreams come true." The soldier's attention tightened like a rope. Did she just say the land where dreams came true? Whoa. So the famed sorcery of the Celts wasn't just a legend after all. Oh, thought one, if I enter here, I'd find I was rich at last. That beautiful girl, who doesn't even know I'm alive, would love me, thought another. I'd find my best friend alive again. Such were the happy thoughts of the 14th. So when their legate barked, "Forward, march!" they surged eagerly towards the fire trench. They knew they could jump over it, kick earth into it. No way was that going to stop them reaching the magical place where their dearest dreams would be true. Suddenly the Queen began to laugh. She laughed and she laughed as if she had just heard the best joke of her entire life. She held her sides, tears poured down her face, she slapped her thighs. The men stopped in surprise. They were even more surprised when she pulled herself together, stood up so straight she seemed far taller than they'd first imagined, and started walking up and down the fire line like a wildcat, raising her arms in a sweeping gesture of summoning and apparently talking to herself. What or who was she summoning? The 14th had faced savage hordes without flinching, but they felt distinctly uneasy. Barbaric warriors, they understood them. Feral fighters, by all means. But crazy. Crazy meant unpredictable. Crazy meant out of your depth. Crazy meant possibly very dangerous indeed. The young queen noted the look on their faces and started laughing again, beckoning the Romans on with both hands, flame-light playing across her face so it cast strange shadows and made her eyes burn like torch fires. "Not your daydreams, boys," she called out, still laughing. "Your dreams, right? Like the ones you had last night? Step forward if you wish to meet them. They're all here. They're all waiting. Don't you think you'd have fun together? Look. Look into the Major's fire." There was 5 seconds total silence, which was exactly the time it took for every soldier present to remember their visions of the previous night in detail. And suddenly, the legion's ranks broke formation and the men turned tail and ran. "Come back, you snivelling little cowards!" bellowed the legate, unsheathing his sword and grabbing first one soldier then another by the arm. "What do you think you're doing? I'll have you court-martialed, flogged. Remember the army's punishment for desertion? Being thrown into the river with a sack full of snakes? Come back!" "You'll have to catch us first," shouted one, wrenching the legate's sword off him. "Meeting our worst nightmares was not part of the deal when we joined the army," bawled another, pushing his commander to the ground. "And we're sick of this country anyway," shrieked a third as he blundered past. "Bad weather, natives who melt into the mist, constant guerrilla warfare. Yeah, and appalling food, and all the girls are painted blue and don't like us." "You're not turning your back on your emperor's army?" roared the legate, struggling to get back up again. "You bet your arrogant Roman ass we are," snarled the cook, and punched his leader on the nose. In the months that followed, Pembrokeshire enjoyed a sudden influx of strong young men willing to learn farming and keen to court Celt girls, providing they went easy on the woad. The next year, many children were born with slightly olive skin, curly black hair and unmistakably Roman noses. But, as most native Celts have brown eyes and dark hair too, they fitted in so easily that no one said a word. The mighty 14th Legion was never seen again. Their proud eagle standard was fished out of the lake several years later, rusty and covered in water weeds. Regan had it brought to her thatched hall, where it was repurposed to uphold one end of her personal washing line. And thanks to the wild stories swirling around the disappearance of an entire military unit, no more soldiers disturbed the peace of Regan's camp. Ever. No more hares were killed for divination either. Instead, in times of need, locals would respectfully consult the hare tribe as a whole for advice, using fire, offerings, songs. And today, they're doing so still. So if you should ever see a hare dancing beneath the full moon, you'll be one of the few humans who knows they're not mad. They're speaking with the stars and predicting the future. For they do not need to read your palm or cast runes to do so. All they need is the night sky above their heads and the silvery singing of the stars, which only a hare's ears are subtle enough to hear.